Doing AI means the hard work of integrating it in the fabric of the organization, people, process, data, and then technology.
Organizations can build successful AI pilots. Far fewer can turn them into enterprise capabilities.
It goes from possibility, the POC mindset, to accountability with the enterprise mindset. We gravitate towards wanting to implement and get things done quickly and work on shiny object. We cannot skip over it and expect to get optimal result.
Welcome back to the human side of AI from the Analyst Architect. Have you ever wondered why AI pilots are everywhere? Think about it. A prototype. Why we have a prototype? It shows that an idea works and often creates a lot of excitement. But turning that prototype into something you can rely on every day across the organization is a very different challenge. That's exactly what happens with AI prototypes in many organizations. Organizations can build successful AI pilots. Far fewer can turn them into enterprise capabilities. Scaling is where the story shifts from innovation to real impact in organizations. And I'm happy to continue this with Dora. It's always my pleasure having you, Dora.
Thank you, Mar. I'm grateful and happy to be here myself.
I think this is a topic that comes up in almost every transformation journey you have been part of, Dora. And correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that is true. We're always, especially when it's a transformation journey and something big and new, always pretty much starting with a proof of concept. But I think you're just talking in part about how we go from a proof of concept now to enterprise scale. And I know we'll be talking about this.
Exactly. And let's get right into it. As you know, many organizations succeed with pilot projects but struggle to scale. Why does that happen so often?
There is a big difference between doing a proof of concept or a pilot and then going enterprise scale. I think the question is, why do pilots fail to scale, right? They seem to be successful, but then when we're trying to, some people might even say in the lingo, roll it to production or implement it at scale for the enterprise, things don't go as expected. And I look at these as two very different animals, if you will. Typically, with proof of concept, it's very contained, it's very small, it's safe. It typically asks the question of, will this work technically? In most cases, they're not. The pilot's about, is this possible? But with enterprise scale, the question is different. It's more about, should we even do it? So when we're doing pilots, it's smaller, it's much smaller scale. It's really just proving out the technology. We usually have a clear owner because somebody wants something, so then the team comes together and we're trying to prove it. We're not testing out every single use case. I've been part of pilots, for example, where when we try to go a little bit bigger, even within the pilot, it was very risky and we hit a lot of snags because not every pilot actually is successful. I've come across pilots that also pilots fail. And what we found, for example, even though it's contained, we're trying to go bigger and from a technical perspective, because again, pilots are mostly about, is this technically viable? Will this work? But when you have big organizations, you're talking about complex, diverse ecosystems, many different technologies over the years. So even with pilots, when we only even trying one or two integrations, try to go a little bit, and you're usually trying the integrations, let's say, with a couple of the big ERPs in the organization. But then once you start to go enterprise scale, and I've been part of pilots where rather than do the top one or two, we said, okay, there is actually a part of the business that are a much older version of ERP, different technology, older version. Let's try to connect to that. Had we not done that, we wouldn't have realized that, okay, that would be a problem because the technology is so old, the interoperability is not there. So even the pilot actually, you can think of it as successful in terms of it proved the concept. Will it work? Will it not work? But in most cases, even with pilots, we're only trying and testing a portion of what the organizational fabric, the technical infrastructure fabric looks like. So pilots, clear ownership, smaller scope, we're just proving, will this work technically? Those really work. But it's different questions and different challenges that we're coming across when we try to scale to enterprise. And that's why pilots do well but they fail to scale because we're now looking at what's really of most important at the enterprise level.
Yeah, and that's naturally will bring us to the next point, where what separates a proof of concept mindset from an enterprise, organization-wide mindset.
Yeah, and I think, like I was mentioning earlier, the proof of concepts is more about, is this viable? Can I do this technically? But the mindset, the enterprise mindset, it needs to shift the question from, can I do this, to, should I do this? Are we even ready and mature to take this on? Because at the enterprise level means you have to not only technically prove out that all interoperability is there, and technically we can figure out which, again, in my experience, that's the easiest part. Because even if we hit snacks, we'll figure it out one way or another. Even if it's not readily available, we'll work. We'll create the right connections. Technically, we'll make it happen. But the bigger questions, and that's why the mindset is different, is how do we get people across divisions, across functions now to work together? Who owns this? Okay, we can do it. Should we do it? Are we mature enough? Do we have the data foundation to really scale this AI proof of concept? Because when you scale it at the enterprise level, that means across functions, we need to be speaking the same language. So that goes beyond technology integration, and it goes back to what we were speaking even in the previous episode, getting people across functions to speak the same language to, in practical terms, I've been in organizations with customer, you would think it's so easy to answer, what is our customer? And there was a different definition for what customer means from one division to the next. Now, imagine going in a little bit deeper, and you're talking about customers, financial terms, backlogs, product, different aspects, different categories, different nomenclatures. Well, even if we technically do it, to successfully, so scaling AI and the enterprise mindset is, are we even mature enough? It's not just about implementing the technology. We need to bring everybody together. We need to go through the transformation. We need to think about governance across these functions, and governance that enables, not that stifles, but governance that actually enables people to come together, start speaking the same language, and implement this transformation that we're talking about. So it goes from possibility, the POC mindset, to accountability with the enterprise mindset. And there's the accountability of, should we do it? And do we have all of the foundational elements already in place? Because if we don't, that means we need to add it. And most people, in my experience, across industries, across organizations, are eager to start implementing the technology and underestimate, delay, or never get to, or do it very not to the level that it's required to bring people cross-functionally together again, speaking the same language and implementing this with the right standards and procedures and understanding and governance in place. So two totally different sides and mindsets in my experience.
Yeah, I love that distinction, Dora. And once we have this differentiation between the mindsets, you mentioned something, and glad you have brought that to the table about the foundation level. Do I have the right data foundation, the correct data foundation? Like you mentioned, it's always the case in all the clients I worked with. Each department defines customer in a totally different definition. So, from your perception, what role does data architecture play in enabling AI to scale?
I can't stress enough how important data architecture is. But I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. Data architecture even can mean different things to different people, right? So data architecture at the enterprise level, it's critical to success. But it's not just about, again, the technical side, the pipelines, the bits and the bytes that run through the pipelines that we're doing the integration, it works technically. For me, data architecture, and some people might call it data architecture. Others might call it information architecture. Others might start talking about semantics. What I'm trying to get to, or what I'm saying, is that the business context of the data, regardless if you call it data architecture, information architecture, semantics, whatever you call it, it is critically important. It's, again, back to, are we speaking the same language? So for enterprise scale, that is important, because if there's a lack of trust in the data, or even if we're making it, I've seen huge implementations. Technically, they worked, but when the time came and it was rolled out and we implemented it, we hit the situations where things broke down not because the data wasn't going through, because functionally it was understood different. Contextually, it was understood different. So they take you down the wrong path. They give you the result, or informing the decision or driving the decision is done on unclear and information that is not aligned, or it's unclear. And when we're talking about AI, we're talking about really being able to process a whole lot of data very fast, decisions that are being done at scale. So that's important because the impact is large. So to your question about data architecture, I can't stress it enough how important it is. It's one of those foundational components for a transformation initiative like driving AI in the organization and integrating it into the processes and the tools and everything in the organization. Paramount to success.
I cannot relate more, Dora, and I would say whether information architecture from a business architecture perspective, data architecture, or whatever semantic or whatever the terminology that you mentioned, they are the engine that keeps AI trustworthy. You can say that. And this will bring us to the next point, where some people accuse AI that they don't create a measurable business impact or even an impact on the customer. But we have a lot of reports that have been published across the last year and so on and so forth. From your experience, of course, we have both examples, but from your experience, can you share an example where scaling AI with the correct approach, with the right foundation, created measurable business or even customer impact?
Yeah, absolutely, I can. And we're talking about being intentional, and you just said the right foundation. I want to share this thought here too, that even with architecture, it doesn't have to be perfect, meaning every single thing totally known ahead of time and we're doing it, but it does have to be intentional, and it does have to be part of the process, not just skipped over or not just trying to go through it very quickly. So the example that I want to share, it was very specific. It was around financial forecasting and backlogs, where actually AI was even used ahead, but every division was doing it their own way. But at the enterprise level, the organization couldn't even forecast and plan for the future as well based on, backlogs and other information, because across the division, across the functions, even though many of them were already had included AI, like modeling for financial forecasting, bringing together was a challenge, and they were not trusting the results. So how this worked and what made it successful is all of the things that we're talking about. It was a very intentional effort. It was a cross-functional effort. What this is and why we're doing it was talked about and understood by everyone that came to the table. Leadership, executive leadership, across divisions were behind it. There was clear ownership if something were to, for who's driving this, who's sponsoring this, and it was visible. This was visible leadership. It's not just we're putting somebody's name on the slides and we're done. And so all of this foundational work, and then there was the other parts of the foundational work where exactly what we're just talking about was a lot around data architecture. Yes, of course, there was also coming together, because this was happening in silos, there was different technology flavors. Now we wanted to come together to get the synergies and get the economies of scale, right? And have a very solid infrastructure, if you will, and technical foundation that can also scale as the organization was growing. But beyond that as well, people came together, they understood what they needed to do, they understood why they were doing it, and they started speaking the same language. That sounds easier than it is. Start speaking the same language means they're starting creating, in some cases, the cross-reference maps, right? Of what this means to you, what this means to you, how are we going to reconcile it together? And sometimes they needed to change. They needed to change categorization and what they call things, what things meant, or how they would categorize them. That's all around understanding our business, agreeing that we speak the same language, and then in actual tangible bits and bytes, in data and metadata. In other words, we are putting that down in place, and that way we're actually creating a solid foundation that's leveraging AI. But what made this successful was not AI alone. It's never about any one technology, AI included. That's important. But in my experience, it's not even the most critical component. It's always about clear reasons why now, who's doing it, the who, what, where, when, clear roles and expectations, clear accountability, the backing from top down, the, sense of urgency around it, making sure that they enable and the employees and the different teams are being enabled to be part of this. There's measurable outcomes, like we've been saying, that are common. And then obviously the infrastructure and the technology part of it and making it happen. And communication back and forth, coordination, orchestration of everything. That's what helped this be a success, leveraging AI even more than before, even better than before.
I love that example, Dora, and it shows all the aspects that we discussed, even in several episodes, all combined into one clear approach that really added value to the organization. And as always, I would like to close this episode with something that teams can act on right away, where we can share steps. What should organizations take when planning to scale AI within the organization?
I think it's a lot of what we talked about, Omar, but if I were to just recap and talk about some very practical steps, don't forget to make sure that you know who owns this, who's behind it. Make sure that that executive backing is there. It's visible. The behavior of, hey, we're in this together and we have common goals is modeled by senior leaders as well. I would say practical step to always ask that question. Those common sense questions that we said too, why are we doing this and what's in it for me? Because it is a transformational program and we want to keep people engaged. Make sure there's clarity about the business value. Make sure there is intent. This is a deliberate, transformational, intentional effort. I would say don't forget about governance. This has big impact. So standards, speaking the same language, but also governance. But governance again, so practical advice, I would say, make sure there's guardrails there, especially when it comes to AI. We have transparency. We're making sure that we are being inclusive with the type of data that represents different segments of the population, different capabilities, right? The transparency is there, the inclusiveness is there, it is relevant. There's feedback loops. So that's a very practical advice that I would give. Make sure that as we're doing this and we're thinking about this end to end, there are feedback loops and that there's also humans in the loop. There ought to be oversight over what AI is doing. And I know last time too, we spoke about different tiers that we can think of around risk, but this is what gets organizations not just saying they're doing AI, but actually integrating it. Doing AI means the hard work of integrating it in the fabric of the organization, people, process, data, and then technology.
That's awesome. And if I would like to recap this, I would say that first, make sure that your organization is ready and enable a governance structure and framework along with the alignment. Any final thoughts?
Yes. No, I think you hit it spot on. Absolutely. Foundations there, alignment there, clarity there, common measurable goals and outcomes defined.
That's a great way to wrap up this episode of the human side of AI. Today, we explored why scaling AI is difficult, what separates experimentation or pilots from real adoption, why data architecture plays such a critical role, and how scaling can create... huge. I totally agree with you. And even information architecture as well, in business architecture, because it is creating this common language that all data experts should use within the foundational layer that all the technologies can use later on.
This is hard work. It is hard work. And in my experience, again, across industries and organizations, we gravitate towards wanting to implement and get things done quickly and work on what Gartner calls the shiny object, right? We have these notions sometimes that there is a magic bullet. Well, even AI is not a magic bullet. So everything around data and information architecture and semantics and governance and working together cross-functionally, this is really hard work. But here's the reality. We cannot skip over it and expect to get, what's the word I'm looking for, optimal results. Sooner or later, like if we're looking for success that sustains, we just have to pull our sleeves up and get that elbow grease in, as they say, do this hard work, because it is hard work. But it's all about how serious are organizations about creating sustained success. If we're just talking about saying we did AI, check mark, but really we're not enabling our organization to meet our business needs now, but also set it up in a way that it can scale and it can evolve as AI and everything else, the industry evolves around us. Well, we can't skip over that part of it. It is very foundational, but I would say back to the basics is the name of the game. It's part of it.
I cannot relate more. Dora, thank you so much again for your insights. It makes this topic far more practical and far less intimidating for teams trying to bridge the gap from pilot to enterprise level. And I would say that in the next episode, we take this one step further and talk about measuring AI impact on organizations and how organizations can show that their AI investments are creating value. Excited for the next episode, Dora?
I am super excited about talking about metrics and measurable outcomes because it's one of those things that, again, we skip over sometimes. But if we don't know what we're measuring and how we're measuring it, we're asking for trouble. So I am excited about the next episode and having the conversation with you, Omar.
Everyone, stay tuned for the next episode.